Plug in.
Hey Greg, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Hey Matthew, how are things?
Good stuff.
Yeah, good, thank you. Working from home still?
I'm on a day off, but
Oh my God, you must really love benefit realization. Hey Steve, how you doing?
Good, yourselves?
Yeah, good, thanks. Michelle, oh my God, ça va?
Yes, Mark, très bien.
Oh, it's lovely to see you.
Wie geht es Ihnen?
Alles klar.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
It's
good
been
to
a
see you
while,
too.
but
yeah,
it's a subject I'm interested in.
Oh, it'll be very interesting, no doubt. Cecilia, how are we doing?
We are almost there. We give it one more minute, and we can start.
Cool.
I'll wait a little bit longer. We'll see what's more. Well, at least I can welcome you all for joining this fourth webinar, which is about benefit realization. Just a few things to mention. Again, it's what we've done previously. Any questions, we are happy to answer. You can either use the raise your hand feature if you actually want to verbally ask a question. So if you raise your hand, we will call you out when we're ready to take your question. Or alternatively, you can use the chatting box on the side and type in your question, and then I'll read them out when we're ready to go through those questions as well. And also, if you have any other questions as well, either to me or someone else, you can put them in the chat box too. And then with that, I think we're ready to start, Mark, aren't we?
Excellent, we are indeed. Thank you very much. Let's kick off. Thanks for taking an hour out of your busy schedule today to talk about benefit realization. My name is Mark Söster. I'm the Executive Director of Sensei Project Solutions, and I'm heading up the Vision and User Adoption team. Well, and as such, benefit realization is, of course, on the forefront of most of our organizations. However, benefit realization or benefit management is one of those areas in the project, program, and portfolio management world, well, that hasn't really been tackled to the point where projects, programs, or portfolios say, hey, just like we have with risks, we need to manage our risks, we need to manage our benefits. Well, we thought it's a good idea to talk about the benefit realization in the context of work management and project portfolio management. We asked actually quite a few of you, could you please give us some questions, some predetermined questions? And I thought I'll show you what the general resonance is, and we'll go through those questions throughout the next hour. I strongly encourage you to participate, to tell us on how you actually see benefit realization in your organization, and beyond that, what does benefit realization actually mean for us? And as you can see, there are already quite a lot of interesting questions, and I'll come back into those questions. But before I do that, I thought I'll give you a little bit of an insight of what we see on the market and how we perceive this, first of all, in terms of industry standards, of course, and then in terms of how you can actually, in reality, apply that kind of benefit realization journey, I'm going to say. So with that, the first question that I would want to ask, and maybe some of you can determine that in one or two sentences, which would be great. Well, tell me, what is a benefit in your world? What does benefit and benefit realization mean in your current work? And look, this could even mean it means nothing. You know, what do you consider benefits to be as part of your day-to-day work life? Are there any comments? Let me have a look. Oh yeah, Matthew.
Yeah, hi. I'm Matt Baker. I'm a project manager from Office of Industrial Relations. I guess for us, if you're looking at a definition of a benefit from our perspective, it's a measurable improvement resulting from change. And typically, the majority of benefits in the context of a project are realised post-project, although some of our projects that may adopt an agile method, some of those measurable improvements, those benefits, would be realised during the project life cycle. So I guess I hope that answers your question. I guess from our perspective, that's how we see that. And in terms of realisation of that, there's obviously roles and responsibilities around the tracking and monitoring of those benefits to ensure that the project is successful. Because I really see benefits realisation as really the mark of a successful project. You could deliver a project on time and cost, but if it's not fit for purpose, or if it doesn't realise those benefits, then is it successful? So,
one would even argue the point that why would I approve a project in the first instance if I don't know those benefits, right?
Yes, very true. Yeah.
That's very true. And really, when we're talking about benefits in that sense, it is actually value proposition. You're absolutely right. And this is how the PMI, there is a very nice practice guide. And when it comes to that framework, this is actually what they're outlined as well. Clearly, a project, as I call it, forms a puzzle piece actually of that benefit realization, because as you quite rightly said, very often benefits are realized well afterwards. Thank you. Are there any other comments? All right. Well, look, I'll tell you how we have started. Yeah.
There was someone that raised their hand.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Yes, please.
Just happened. Grace, I think it was. Yep.
Yeah, that was me. Grace from SA Power Networks. I guess we go through both benefit enablement and benefit realization process. And again, as mentioned previously, we value, basically we will mark the project's priority. One of the things that we look at is the benefits that gets enabled or realized later. So these are the two components that we look at as well.
Yeah, thank you. And again, it outlines that really the benefit as such is almost acting like an umbrella over our projects and programs. And often portfolios are really created to accomplish particular benefits, of course. And that's where you quite often see those benefit realization plans combined with the portfolio that you want to execute in order to accomplish those. So yeah, again, it's super important to understand that benefit means value, and both of you actually outlined that this is actually how you track it. However, value doesn't necessarily mean that it's a tangible and intangible value, and I know that a lot of organizations struggle with the tangibility of a benefit. Well, in terms of the industry standards, and we really had to sort of decluster that a little bit. It really starts the way that at least that the PMI describes that, really starts with a benefit realization management component from a strategic perspective, saying, well, actually, the overarching goal that guides the direction of the organization is what we refer to as the strategic goal or the strategy. And based on the strategy, we then have particular objectives that we want to fulfill. And this is really a process of decomposition of the strategic goals and initiatives. And these strategic goals and initiatives are very often referred to as programs, portfolios, projects. However, they of course can also have operational input. Well, these particular initiatives then provide ultimately the output that will determine the benefit realization. We see that quite often, that a particular benefit is only, and we heard that as well, is only realized well after a particular project. So the terminology that the business realization management system or process utilizes, as it essentially says, well, a benefit has outcomes or needs to achieve outcomes needs to achieve outputs in order to accomplish the outcomes of that benefit, the value of that benefit. So what we quite often see is we decomposition the benefits into different outputs, and these outputs are then ultimately the deliverable of that project, that puzzle piece of the project to deliver this whole benefit. And of course, the outcomes then ultimately determine the value or values of this particular benefit that I want to accomplish, in combination, of course, with the cost and the benefits that you accomplish. You then ultimately outline those values, and this is really the main component when we decomposition our benefit realization. So this is how the PMI essentially outlines where benefits really fits into the overarching organizational structure. Now, this is a framework, right? And when I read the book, and I read a lot of these process books, they are always very good in giving you a direction. But what does that, and for us, of course, it means, what does that tangibly mean for us and our customer? How can I ensure that they can manage benefits and value so that it fits automatically into the bigger picture of the organization? So what we did is we actually started to decomposition the business process management internally, so that we also had the ability to determine how can we incorporate a business process into a capability that an organization can use. And based on that, based on the PMI practice, we then literally utilize the terminology so that we all have an understanding what that actually means. So strategic themes, for example, for us is this overarching theme of a guide. The reason why that is so important is, in order for us to determine value for the organization, we need to understand which direction we want to go to. Of course, a government institution has completely different values or themes than, for example, a commercial entity. And then, of course, we have the strategic goals. And for us, strategic goals are really the measurable components, financial or non-financial components that we work towards, where our benefit needs to work towards to do that. And initiatives behind that really are the execution puzzle pieces or vehicles that allow us to actually execute those benefits through outputs and outcomes. So this is how we then really decomposition and saying, okay, that ultimately means I have the ability to associate a strategic, associate a benefit to my initiatives, but also to my strategic goals, because I need to know whether that actually links. And we then literally went down that path of, that's very important, value, the net result, really, this is what we want to accomplish, the net result of the realized benefits, less the cost of achieving the benefits. And that's really what we are trying to do here. So we looked at all of these different links between strategy and strategic goals and initiatives, right? And we came up with, well, actually something like that, where we said, okay, I know with, organizations that want to manage benefits, they do this in the context of strategic goals, and we have the ability to either have a top-down planning approach or a bottom-up planning approach. And when we looked at that, we really thought, okay, so why would you want to, have a framework where you have the ability to actually associate benefits from different directions? And we came up with, actually, it depends very much on how you as an organization want to measure and capture your values, so that you can determine whether this project, program, or portfolio is successfully executing our strategic goal. So based on that, we really thought, okay, how can we ensure that organizations grow into managing value? And value for us really is that different terminology of benefits. And we realize that an organizational maturity right now is required in order to recognize those values. All too often I go to organizations where most organizations where they don't have a rigor process of benefit realization, purely because they just simply execute the project that they've been told. Surely someone who has approved that project has gathered that benefit. It's just in their mind or maybe on a piece of paper. We wanted to ensure that an organization can actually capture those and measure them against the strategic goals. So based on those different measurements, we really thought, okay, how does it work that strategic goals in organizations are actually measured? And really, in the first stage, we thought, okay, within the portfolio, quite often there are maybe some associations of benefits where I just simply, as part of my project, have a list of benefits and I capture them. And often I don't even have any kind of measurements or only very high level measurements. So most organizations start that way. But then at one point in time, we realize as an organization that in order for us to determine the project value, we need to understand and prioritize those projects. And a lot of organizations these days do that by outlining and prioritizing a project against the strategic goals, skipping really the benefit realization and saying, well, this project is associated to that strategic goal, so that business driver to this percent. But most organizations that have matured into that project prioritization component utilize that, not necessarily with the context of benefit realization. Well, and then and that really means a percentage, and I'll show you in a second what that actually looks like. But it really means that a particular percentage of the strategic goals or business driver you want to accomplish, you assume you can accomplish that through this portfolio. But then in the third stage, and before I start the third stage, let me quickly show you what I mean. So organizations, when they talk about prioritizations of benefits or prioritizations of, let me just bring that up, prioritizations of projects against strategic goals, we actually have the ability, in Project Online, there is that ability, of course, where I, on a project by project basis, so right now I'm in a project where I have the ability to associate the value of that project against the strategic goals. So in that instance, I assume that by associating this project to my strategic business driver, expanding into new market segments, that I'm going to grow my revenue from the market segments between by $500 or $1 million. Now, this is often the value that is then forgotten to be tracked, and that's where that third stage comes into place, where we actually say, okay, in order for us to determine what kind of value we want to accomplish, we need to ultimately determine those benefits, which we refer to as, well, almost a direct comparison, where we say, hey, the amount of those benefits have a direct relation to my strategic goals. So really, from a maturity perspective, we often, or also from a workflow perspective, we often see, well, we want to have a high-level idea, high-level association, so that we realize that. Two, we want to be able to prioritize our projects based on the value, and we just associate them against the strategic goals, to all the way to, well, actually, let's go and think about benefits and how they add this particular value. So we really went down this path of trying to decomposition the different value pieces that we need in order to accomplish the benefit and the strategic goals. Well, what that looks like, and again, we're playing around with those. What that looks like for me is that I need to have the ability to create a brand new benefit, and this benefit needs to allow me to be associated and go through a benefit realization process. And this is the one, by the way, that the PMI recommends, which really is the identification, planning, execution, and sustaining of my benefit. And as part of the planning and execute, very often you then have the ability to determine whether this is a tangible or a non-tangible value. If it's a non-tangible value, then it's difficult to track that, of course. And I'll show you what that means. So in this particular benefit, adequate equipment for consumables with the objective and the goals, and then we have those outputs and the outcomes. So the PMI outlines it in the context of a benefit needs to have certain outputs. I would translate that to deliverables that a project needs to deliver to accomplish that benefit. But the benefit manager or the benefit owner still needs to make sure that once those projects are closed, that we actually ultimately have those outcomes. And the way that this happens is by associating outputs really to the projects, ensuring that those are delivered, and the benefit owner then has the ability to track that. Now, when we're talking about tracking, again, when it comes to benefits, you'd be surprised how many different variations there are when it comes to tracking value. It can be very easy, and they just simply say revenue and cost, but actually benefits and value is determined in many other ways. And the questions that you've outlined that we're looking at in a second, I'll outline that. How can I actually associate the well-being of my staff? How can I measure that? And there are really good questions when it comes to that benefit realization, and I think that's why a lot of organizations struggle with that as well. So in this particular instance, I actually have a benefit, and I associated this to my strategic goals. And with this strategic goals, I know exactly what my goal is right now. So in this particular goal, by 2023, I want to have less than or equal to 10% of administration reduction to automate my work. Well, in this particular instance, I'm going to say this strategic goals is tangible and has not a direct correlation to that. That's why it's not an indirect. That's why it's an indirect benefit. It actually measures different units of measures, and these units of measures could be anything, but they need to be quantifiable in some way. And this could be revenue, this could be cost, this could be a percentage or a number, and ultimately that needs to flow into the strategic goals, so that when you plan, execute, and sustain your benefit, that you ultimately have the ability to say, okay, well, how have I accomplished my strategic goals? How am I tracking towards that? And that's where I then can say, all right now I want to grow my revenue by 5%, let's say. I select that, and at this point, okay, this is a bad example because I only have one. At this point in time, I can see actually this is my expand into existing market segments, a portfolio, grow revenue by 5%, and it then literally allows you to break down the areas of the benefit. And then in this particular, I know that this project then has the following benefits, and these benefits are then quantifiable either in percentage or in revenue or in number. So it really means that decomposition down from and then bringing that information back up. It really allows you to embed the value of benefit realization across your programs, projects, and portfolios. And from an ease perspective, of course, you then have the ability to associate them into your portfolio, where you literally have the ability to incorporate benefits into your portfolio, and that could be existing or new benefits. So we're really trying to ensure that the overarching mission here really is to ensure that we allow organizations to grow into those managing value compositions. Because when I look at the questions that we have here right now, well, these are the typical questions that I hear quite often. What are the tools and techniques required to measure economic and social benefits in government-initiated projects? Well, it's an outstandingly good question, but really the only way that we can answer that is by ensuring that we understand what social benefit, or what measure economy and social benefit, what that actually means. It probably means engagement of your constituent in digital forms, and these are then all measurable. So really, whether these are tangibles or intangibles, a benefit in some form needs to be measurable, otherwise it's just not a benefit. So that's how we are trying to involve benefit realization into the work environment, not just project programs and portfolios, which of course is usually the initiation, but quite often operational work is of course needs to accomplish certain benefits as well, and that is, retaining your customer base and all of those wonderful things. So, yeah.
Also have another question here from Lance.
Yeah.
How do you record the results of the benefits achieved after the project has finished?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, but first of all, we need to determine that benefit. But you need to be able, independently of what the project is. In that instance, it's the portfolio. When I drill into this project, right, into this benefit, then I actually track the benefit realization above the project. Some of that may form part of my project execution, but here is actually where I then would track the benefit, and the way that it should be tracked is, of course, at the start you should have a planned value which references your baseline or your budget. The PMI refers to that as the planned value because you can have different variations of terminology there. And then, of course, you need to make sure that you update your forecast and your actual value, and this value is really dependent on what the metrics of your strategic goal is. So you would continue to track your project, your benefit up until such time, because you have planned it and have executed up until such time where you can hand it over and sustain it in your normal operations. And that's why I was saying it's the overarching umbrella of a project. That's really how to see a benefit as such. Does that answer the question? I hope so. Look, I'll go through a couple of other ones too, just so that you see them as well, because I thought they are all very, very interesting. Tracking benefit post-project. Well, we just spoke about that. Really, we see that. That benefit realization always happens after, most of the times happens after projects. I think beforehand, I think Matthew, it was you also said, agile. We do lots of agile project work, and therefore we actually accomplish quite a lot of benefits throughout the project. It's actually a really, really big advantage, I think, of the agile in the software world, because you can very easily and quickly react on whether this is a benefit or not. So that's very true. You definitely have the ability to track them throughout the projects as well. Yeah, that was an interesting one. What is the best or recommended way of using Project Online or other tools to continue to manage the realization of benefits after a project has been closed? Well, in Project Online, really, we have very much a project focus on that. It's not a benefit realization center in its own right. You do have the ability to track those benefits in Project Online on a project by project basis, and you can consolidate that. But really, it doesn't. This particular Project Online doesn't facilitate for a benefit realization center unless you would extend that, of course, which you could do with with customization. Now, the way that we do this right now is we actually utilize Office 365. We've got this next evolution of our tool that we refer to as Sensei IQ. It's utilizing the entire infrastructure of Office 365. The reason why that is so important, in particular in the context of benefits, is because the underlying service is called Common Data Service, CDS, and that really allows me to pick the different measurements and information that you may track somewhere else to determine whether that benefit is realized. And by the way, what I've just shown you in the background is actually that benefit realization center, where you have the ability to do top-down benefit realization planning and management, and bottom-up, and it meets in the middle. Because it's just like, it's information, it's like risks and issues. It just continues after the project. That's the only difference. What are proven qualitative techniques to forecast future benefit realization progress? The business is to estimate when they're likely to realize the benefit and how much it is targeted value. Well, that's a really good question. We asked ourselves that question. How can we actually assist organizations in predicting whether the benefits that you want to realize, whether they're actually accurate and whether they are predicted correctly? Well, the utmost foundation of that is to recognize that you need to have a value, because that's not always a given in benefit realization. And that you then determine your current baseline and your anticipated plan, and then literally outline that on we are allowed to track either on a monthly, a quarter, or an annual basis, depending on this, depending of course on the length of the benefit. But then you need to introduce the rigor of measuring that value that you want to capture. Now, this could be revenue increase and cost decrease. That is relatively easy. When it comes to satisfaction scores and things like that, there are of course different techniques that you can use with surveys and all of those things. But always try to bring it down to this value. It's a value that we need to agree to. What that value is and how likely you can predict that, well, I guess it's different when you ask Elon Musk to go to Mars, or whether I ask, let's say, SI Water to set a new pipeline. There's some things that have been done before and others haven't. So it's really, I think, organizational specific. But I'm happy to hear some feedback on how you actually determine the qualitative techniques of forecasting benefits. Are there any sort of techniques that you apply, or any experiences that you see that this is actually quite successful? Yeah, I know. Benefit realization, huh? It's a hard bugger. Look, and again, that's actually why we are here. We really want to decomposition this. We've been talking about it for years, all the time. Crickets. And ultimately we want to make sure that we can confidently say, hey, this is my project and I'm accomplishing that value to the company, and I track this through benefits. It's interesting that this concept is actually quite difficult. How to measure employee well-being? Do you consider risks reduction a benefit or an outcome which then has benefits? Well, it's a very good question, because you can actually also have disbenefits. A benefit doesn't necessarily is always a positive thing, and often a change that you evoke will have negative consequences. And in the PMI, it actually refers to those as disbenefits, so as negative benefits. So I think sometimes in order to accomplish an organizational benefit, you need to evoke change, of course, and that change has negativity incorporated. It needs to be incorporated into your overarching capability. Now, when it comes to measure employee well-being, well, I think every company is a little bit different. So we do actually internal surveys, and of course we look at our staff turnover rate, and we combine those, and we have a particular vision of retaining our staff and keeping them happy in their work-life balance. And I think every company or every organization needs to think about what does employee well-being actually mean. Michelle?
Yeah, just a couple of comments to make here. One is that projects are not always about dollar values. So generally you get three types of projects: increase revenue, reduce costs, and you also have compliance and legal. So for instance, if you need to comply to legislation by a certain date, your benefit is really that you remain compliant, or that you are going to be compliant by a date. So I guess right. The value, I don't know, you don't necessarily need to measure the value with a dollar amount, but you have a non-compliance which could mean you're losing your license and things like that. So that's probably where the negative benefits come into play, or the negative aspects come into play. Maybe the other thing I wanted to mention is you ask for techniques to try and get your customers or your colleagues to identify the benefits. Perhaps the motivational question is also, what if you don't do this project? What does that mean to you? So you can ask why and why and why constantly. You can drill down more questions like that, but you can ask, what if we don't do this project? In other words, underneath it is, how motivated are you to do this project? And if you don't get that strong buy-in, then you shouldn't do that project.
That's exactly right. And often that is not even measured in benefit. It really is that benefit capability. Well, it's all measured as in, is it worth it or not? We just structure that value really in benefits. And you're absolutely right. That's why we are talking about even tangibles and non-tangible benefits. One of those benefits of ensuring that I'm compliant, of course, would mean that I can operate in that business under that certification, for example. So yeah, absolutely right.
So, Mark, if I may just add one more thing, I think benefits have to really be looked at generally at the same time as risks, not just risks for the projects, but risks for the organization. So there's a lot of good initiatives that bring benefits, but we don't often think about what the risks are going to be. And I'll just give you an example. If you have a project to develop a drone, for instance, fantastic. That'll get our company to be ahead of the game. Say a couple of years ago, we had the game. We can use our drones to deliver goods, etc., etc. What people don't necessarily think is the ethical aspects of that particular strategy. Which means, have you thought about what would happen if somebody is using your drone for dropping a bomb somewhere? So it's an extreme example, of course, but this is what the modern world, I think, is about. It's like new technology that allows you to do things that are unintended or allow people to use your product in an unintended fashion. So I think it's very important to think up front about the product of the project as well.
Very much, yes. And it is actually not only in modern technology that way. I think it was always a red line that anything that was good could also be used to bad, really. But yes, it's an extreme example, but a very, very truthful one. Yeah. Risk. It's funny that you say that. When we obviously we are starting, when we designed our initial thought, we had in our benefit also the ability for you to manage risks for exactly that reason. Now we hide that for the simple fact that most organizations struggle with the fact that that they manage project risks. I didn't want them to be overwhelmed by thinking about risk management of benefit realization. But if you think about it in the context of large undertaking, it's absolutely a necessity. That's why we incorporated them. Yeah. Yeah, spot on. All right. We've got quite a lot of other questions here. So what are the responsibilities? This is a really good one and a very important one. And I think this is something that a lot of organizations get wrong when it comes to benefit. What is the responsibility of the project manager to define, document, and manage the benefits? At what point does the responsibility stop? For example, if the project has an end date, but the benefit takes longer. It's a great question, and it's a conundrum that a lot of project managers have. What do you think? Three, 2, 1. Oh yeah, yes, thank you. Robert, please.
Yeah, look, the way we deal with it in the project space is we have a project benefits workbook that we start up pretty early in the initiation stage, and that's a collaboration between the project manager, the senior user, and the project executive, and collectively, they we push a lot of that responsibility onto the senior user and the project executive. Say, what are your benefits? We assist in the documentation of that through that workbook. That then leads into how we, in our processes, we put that into our business case and the project proposal, which is what authorises the project. From there, it goes into our PPM, where we flesh that out in more detail in the actual application itself, so that we can measure that towards the handover or end of project. And at that point, we also then say, this is our end of project survey. 6 months later, we do the project office, not the project manager. So the project manager does the initial end of project survey, and they look at the measurables of that if they're capable of measured at that stage. Some are, some aren't. But we do another one at the project office space where we measure that. We send out the survey again 6 months later in that space, and that's again pushed across to, from the very start, we say, senior user, project executive, this is your responsibility. So we give that to them, and we make them own that responsibility up front, but we assist and walk them through the process.
Look, I couldn't agree more, and you're absolutely right. In my opinion as well, you need to have a benefit owner, and the benefit owner, whoever this may be, on a seniority basis or responsibility basis, is the person accountable and the person responsible for ensuring the realization of the benefit. It may be a project manager who is accountable providing some of those things. So I would see here, for example, again, using that cost reduction as an example, I know that I need to have a purchase of subscription, and I need to set up support of users. So these are all of the outputs that my project needs to accomplish. But then, in order to determine the outcome of reduction of administration, I need to understand what my initial administrative cost was, and then I need to say, okay, how long does that go to? Till 2022. So by 2022, I need to be in a position to say that I have reduced my counts by 10%. And again, you do this by tracking it throughout the entire life of this benefit. So really the puzzle pieces, the outputs, are the ones that the project delivers under the benefit. The outcomes is what the benefit realization measures. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Lance.
Hi, I was just going to make the point that at our organisation, the PM is responsible for delivering the outputs that enable the benefit to be realised, but it's the business that is actually responsible for realising the benefit.
That's exactly, and that's what it needs to be, spot on. Yeah, because we execute it, you know. It's like saying, hey, you know, I want to have a dinner. I want to have spaghetti carbonara, and I go into an Italian restaurant, and he brings me. He knows I want carbonara. He is not responsible for my appetite. He is responsible for satisfying what I want to eat, and that's the same with benefits. I want to gain a benefit from a business perspective. Of course, I need someone who does that, but I want to know what that benefit is. I know it's a bad analogy, but I hope I brought the point across. So yeah, look, great questions. Next one, the difference between benefit realization and change management. Who initiates the benefit plan? Who monitors the plan? Who owns the plan? Examples of benefit realization for the civil infrastructure projects. Okay, so civil infrastructure project, of course, is probably more roadworks and all of those areas. Yeah, I'd love to hear some feedback on what you think the difference between benefit realization and change management actually is. What do you reckon? And I've got a few on that. Lance, you've got your hands up. You want to?
Yeah, look, I'd classify change management as the bridge that actually gets you to the benefit. If you don't have change management and the people changing behavior, the benefits won't be realized.
Look, I see that too. Yeah, change management for me is a vehicle to ensure that we actually realize the benefit through user adoption in that sense. Yeah, I don't think you can't compare it. It's certainly, you need to incorporate it as part of your project. So when you think about benefits, you need to think about the consequences as well. And of course, change management is hugely important. It's interesting. We at the moment we're doing we've defined, looking back and looking at our customers. We always we have one main issue across our customer base when we think about the industry. It is user adoption. So the ability for you to provide user adoption, and we are thinking very deeply around that user adoption capability to the point where we now rolled out a 100% user adoption strategy that allows us to ensure that change management is incorporated so that you actually accomplish the value that you want to accomplish. So it really goes hand in hand, those two things. The struggling part there is, how do you measure change management? But you'd be surprised how clearly you can actually manage change management and measure change management too. So look, in regards to benefit realization for a civil infrastructure project, it's a very infrastructure and government related questions. I mean, infrastructure projects, the benefit is quite often chewed out before it happened, because politically you need to be able to justify those. I mean, I don't have an educated answer to that, to be quite frank. Maybe is someone here that has done that before, some infrastructure project benefit realization? How do you ensure that your politician promised you the bridge and all of the wonderful things? How did that happen, or how do you measure that? I don't know. I guess once the building is there, it's there. Not sure. I guess from a commercial perspective, when we're talking about civil infrastructure, from a commercial perspective, I mean, you can always see that. Oh yeah, Lance, please.
Sorry, just got some thoughts on this. Happy to share, but I guess in local government where we work, quite often we actually get grant funding, and there's always some justification that was provided with the grant funding, and there's always somebody you have to report to about what you did with it. So a lot of that reporting actually goes back in the same kind of form as it was originally requested. So you have to close that loop in terms of basically reporting back on to whoever actually gave you the money of what you did with it and what was achieved.
As long as they're interested in it.
Well, yeah. But that's a common method that we use.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you. Benjamin.
I think remembering back to like the days of the tunnels and stuff being put around Brisbane, I mean, it was usage of those tunnels. It's usage data that's the big one for civil infrastructure stuff. Yeah, so, if you're saying a road upgrade or something like that, you've got a benchmark of what the usage before, and you can measure it, what was used after.
Yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense. I would think that you could probably measure all infrastructure projects like that, because the initial intent needs to be clarified before you start building, because it's quite expensive anyway. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you. Tina.
Yeah, just following on with that, I think the civil infrastructure is actually a really powerful one that can be done. But we need to be making sure that it is front of mind to do it, so that we capture, travel times, reduction, a lot of the federal funding on, black spot programs and stuff like that. Your crash histories, those things are, you've got it. You just got to make sure that you capture that stuff before and after. And unfortunately, the nature of the beast is we move on to the next big infrastructure project, and we don't always loop back.
No, unless there is, in 25 or 30 years' time, a student who wants to do his doctorate and collects all of the information and lets us know. Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. And actually, yes, I believe that too. It would actually be the strongest contender for benefit realization. But as you also quite rightly said, once the project is closed, who likes to look back?
Well, and unfortunately, it's not just civil on that one, but, there's really good, clear opportunities for it to happen.
Yeah, no, that's very good feedback. Thank you. Civil engineering. I'm very much interested in that some more, actually. How does one estimate likelihood of the benefit being realized, and at what time might it be realized? I think this goes very much to the same way of where we look at qualitative techniques of forecasting, right? I don't think that there is, again, that the one time fits all. So in a schedule, at least I can say, okay, we've got the determination of duration, effort, time, resources. So we can always do that. But when it comes to, the likelihood of a benefit being realized, depends on the benefit and really on the organization. The nice example is actually on that benefit realization for the civil infrastructure. I'm sorry. So that's I think it's an internal process that needs to be assessed. Now, the way that we are looking at this right now is actually through data collection and through predictive data analytics. So it does require, of course, a certain amount of data, but imagine over the next 5 years, you would collect that and you would have your plan, your forecast and your actual, and you have the ability then also, of course, to see how successful you worked and then have the ability to predict that accordingly. So I think that there are measurements that can be done in the future, but I don't know whether there is a proven process.
Hey, Mark. We've got a question from the side here, and also we've got about 10 minutes left. Caroline have asked, what is the method for recognizing other variables that have ongoing and or ad hoc negative and positive effects on planned benefits? Example, COVID-19 impacts, and how do you prove them out?
Oh, man, they are tough questions. That's a really good question. Now, I personally see this right now in the context of sustainability. So when you go through the business process, or when you go through the PMI process of benefit realization, for example, there comes the point in time where you need to say, hey, this benefit is now sustained or sustainable. Now, this sustainable doesn't mean it's sustainable forever, and that then needs to be, of course, monitored as part of your operational component, and ultimately that's ingrained. A plan is always as good as something changes, right? It's just a fact of life, and COVID, I think, has shown us all, how important it is to react quickly. Yeah. So yeah, is there any other feedback from the other audience for all of your benefit managers? Any idea? Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, I don't, how can multiple measures, that's a great question, I thought as well. How can multiple measures be documented for a single benefit? And how can benefits realization be tracked progressively if measuring monthly or annually for a period of time? Okay, this is exactly the question we asked us as well when we designed the benefit realization capability. And it is interesting and we originally thought, okay, I've got a benefit, I associate my metrics, my value, but what happens if we have more than one? Well, we actually determined that a benefit should have one value, one target value. If you have multiple values, then it should actually be an additional benefit, because a benefit, it may have consequences for other ones, but it does have one predictable measurement, I think. So the way that we have literally incorporated both of those, the multiple single benefits, multiple measures, and also how is that realized? Well, we just incorporate this really as a benefit realization plan. Within that benefit realization plan, look, I'll show you that. I'll go into my portfolio. Now, in a particular portfolio, I deliver my benefits and I have a benefit realization plan. In that benefit realization plan, literally, I go into those benefits and track those benefits accordingly. So in that particular one, again, that's the same one that we are. I have one measurement. Now, if I would need to track another measurement for that benefit, what I would actually do is I would create a new benefit, because there are very specific measurements that should go up into the strategic goal. And if I have if I have a benefit that goes in one or two strategic goals, then I would actually put them into different benefits and distribute them accordingly. Because overarchingly, the collection of all of your projects in that portfolio is ultimately a benefit realization plan, right? So when I'm in my portfolio IT 2020, what's the benefit realization plan of that portfolio? Okay, these are the three benefits that I measure. Now, when it comes beyond that, of course, the measurement, as I said, with the tracking, we actually determine in the metrics what do you want to do? You know, do you want to do this annually, monthly, quarterly, and do you want to actually have a cumulative value, or do you want to give me each month the monthly figure and we then add that up? And then really all you do is you track those values, and the value can be tracked quite simply. So that's how we incorporate the value of sorry, let me just bring that back, the value of a benefit in terms of the value of a benefit in terms of the tracking. We track them either monthly or annually or quarterly, but we wrap all of this up really in that portfolio program or project. And the amount of numbers of benefits that you have within that is actually then your benefit realization plan, because you manage every single benefit through this plan. So that's how we handle that. I don't know whether there are other suggestions, whether you actually manage benefits that have multiple values. I'd love to hear that.
Ben Jackman, wouldn't multiple for a single benefit erode the attributability?
I rest my case. That's exactly right. That's what I see as well, and that's why the focus on the benefit would be wrong. We want to make sure that we have a target that we want to have on that benefit, and if we have multiple benefit targets, then there should be multiple benefits. Yeah. And you'd be surprised. I mean, it always sounds easy, right? Oh, well, let's just track that benefit. I only ever met one company that was very rigorous of tracking benefits and costs on a project by project basis. Yeah, you'd be surprised how difficult it is to actually ascertain the values that you want to track. It's not easy. All right, now I know we've only got 10 more minutes. I think we've got a couple of more. Oh yeah, sorry, a couple of more questions here. How to design program project benefit management lists and tool sets to enable an organization to best manage and track benefits post project and programs well. That is exactly the $100,000 questions that we wanted to answer as well. And again, as part, we call it Sensei IQ. We've got this project, program, portfolio, and benefit realization component in there. And this really allows us to do this. Well, on one hand, you have the ability, of course, when I bring this back in, on one time, you can, of course, just simply say, hey, I've got a program. In my program, I want to now create a brand new benefit because this is a benefit that I want to do. I go into my benefits and I create my new benefit by simply going through this wizard. And then as you can see, it literally now leads me through that benefit realization process. Not only have I got this now in my benefits, but of course it is associated to my program. So it is actually a seamless capability because the flow of information wanders between portfolio, program, projects, and very easily can you actually now say, hey, I'm the program manager, I'm in charge of sub-project 1, I give project manager 2 the ability now, so I'm going to take this benefit out of my program into the project, but since this is a sub-project, of course, it still belongs to that program. And that, of course, in turn means when I then run things like my portfolio status report, you then have all of that, of course, nicely incorporated into that bigger picture here. Let me just show you that again. This is really the idea. The decomposition means flow of data across the organization, no matter whether it's portfolio, program, project, or operational work. So you literally then have the ability to say, hey, first let me have a look at my portfolio status with all of my sub-programs, etc. And there will then also, of course, the ability to view your business, your benefit realization plan through details and tracking. But you, of course, have the ability then to drill through and say, okay, well, then let me have a look at that program status report and let me have a look at how this works right now. Right now, I've got a budget, but we haven't really started yet, obviously. So I really have the ability to view the information top down and bottom up because the data flow needs to. Quite often benefits start actually at the top. Hey, I've got a strategy, I've got an idea, these are the benefits that I want. Other organizations say, well, no, I want to do this on a project level. So the flow of the data goes in between the actually proposal, project programs, portfolios, etc. So that's how we would handle the sort of the management of that benefit. Of course, the benefit is only is as long as it moves into that sustain phase, and then it's completed. So that's how we handle that. Yeah.
We only got a couple more minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Then let's make it quick. I think we are actually running out of questions here as well. What would be the key steps you would recommend an organization to follow to prepare for and implement a new benefit framework? Well, actually, this is almost another session. There are some really smart ways of doing that. The first step is recognizing that you want to do it. You know, the recognition of it is there, and then there are actually there is in the, by the way, in the PMI framework, there is also a questionnaire and a framework of how you can progress to those maturity levels, just like in project management as well. If you're interested in that, shoot me through an email. I've got some good information about how those processes actually can be implemented. Look, it's all quite theoretical because it comes from a book and it's a framework. You need to try to apply that, of course, into your own environment and make the best out of that. But yes, there are definitely some really good frameworks in place. See, that's great. So that was the last question anyway, which is good. Look, as a summary, I know this hour went by quickly, and thanks for the discussion about that. Benefit realization is a tough part, but we really need to remember one thing. Benefit realization is nothing else but the value, the net result of the realized benefits less the cost of achieving the benefits. It's value that we want to accomplish. Now, to answer also some of your questions of how you implement that here, this is the benefit realization management framework that literally goes through the identification, through the execution and the sustainability. And of course, that ultimately goes back up to the strategy. That's why there's sometimes a sort of benefit top down and bottom up, because it can happen on both ends. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the hour. I hope it was worth your while. Hey, if you are interested, we are currently running internal trials of getting our benefit realization solution to the point where it's very intuitive. If you're interested in participating in that, please shoot us through an email that will probably also allow you to at least get your hands on and see how things are actually could be done in a pragmatic way, not just from a book in a framework. All right, that leaves me to say thank you very much. Oh, email to whom? That's a great question, and that back to Cecilia for the closure of this meeting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to say, yeah, you can send it through to me, and after this session, I'll send out an evaluation survey, and either you can make a comment in that one or just email directly back to me. Any other questions you might have about this session or any more information, just reach out to me, and I'm happy to make sure that gets followed up on. So
great. Cecilia, let's do this through the form. If you can add another maybe name in there so that we know who it is. And if you're interested in it, write it in the comments. Hey, I'm interested in that. Then we'll contact you.
Yeah, I'll just add it in as a subject in there before sending it out.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Wonderful long weekend, except Queensland. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.